get away by preaching or professing, as per my profession. You are all the people who are going to do the work.
Meeting of minds.
So jokes apart, as India is fast developing, with the fifth largest economy currently to be the third very soon, and the 140 crore people, the dream of 140 crore people to see India as a developed country, very eloquently addressed and put together by our Honorable Prime Minister. So I always say like this, it is not only Prime Minister's vision, it is also the dream of 140 crore Indians who want to see the country developed. A developed country is not merely that our economy size will become maybe $40 trillion from what it is today. Maybe we shall have per capita income increasing from $2,500 to maybe to $18,000 or $20,000, but also a growth that is much more inclusive, based not merely on creation of job, not merely based on a service-driven economy that more or less we are today. Right? If we look in our GDP and we look at the portion of what is the manufacturing portion, what is the services portion, and the sectors, but a significantly large focus in this economic growth shall also be what is called knowledge-driven economy. If we look today in US as the number one economy, US, China, maybe together look. Much of the knowledge-driven companies, whether you look from Amazon, Nvidia, Apple, or you look from Uber, or you look from Facebook, WhatsApp, all these companies, knowledge-driven companies are where actually the real economic growth is. I personally believe that railways modernization shall not merely happen only because of what we are going to lay down, that is of course a physical infrastructure, but significantly lot more growth shall happen because of the new knowledge that is going to be infused into the railway sector. So let us briefly look at what are we trying to visualize, right? Railways primarily carries two functions, passenger and freight. In passenger travel, our goal is to have available, accessible, affordable and safe travel for all people. And one of the primary thing behind Viksit Bharat is that our development has to be inclusive in nature. We already know that around 57,000 crore rupees of subsidy in terms of the ticket price that goes into the passenger traffic, right? Roughly around 46%. That most likely may continue to same number, lower number, that be, but in order to have an economic inclusive growth, let us put that point beyond the discussion at this point of time. But the important part is that for passenger travel to become more convenient, affordable, accessible, available, there is a large thing that are happening. Introduction of newer trains like Vande Bharat, more than 100 have already been done. Conversion of our bogies of the normal category to the Vande Bharat standard. Redevelopment of our stations, Amrit Bharat trains for several of them. And so on, right? So a lot more things are happening currently focusing on the passenger travel. The second part that Dr. Ahiwaji also mentioned related to freight traffic. Freight is an important part. It's very important because it drives economic growth. Both the domestic prices are in control as well as export competitiveness of the country is important when it comes to the logistics efficiency that Dr. Ahiwaji briefly mentioned about, and it was mentioned in the beginning. Right? So in order for freight traffic, and furthermore in our remote villages where railway is a primary medium of transportation, right? Economic growth also happens because railways is used by people, whether milkmen for transporting milk from one place to other, or small vendors, or for farmers, for which currently recently there is a scheme of Shetkari Kalyan scheme from railways and so on. So there is a lot more economic growth that also happens in railways. If you look, because of railways, not only the passenger travel. Further, due to the freight, as was already mentioned, a dedicated freight corridor was conceived maybe in 2008, and currently we are in the process of completing 2,843 kilometers of dedicated freight corridor, both eastern and western put together. Just being 4% of the entire length of the railway track currently, the sizes that were mentioned earlier. At this moment itself, it is carrying around 10% of the load of the freight. That means there is a value in what was conceived and what is getting implemented. With the new three things that are being talked about of high density corridors or of energy cement mineral corridors or rail salvage corridors and so on, this entire movement towards more and more freight moving to railways in a multimodal share shall increase further. There are always possibilities and examples existing, possibly most likely be in the Western Australia and other areas where you see the track lengths of carrying load of 45 tons, and currently we are far away from that. Right? So there is a possibility of doing that. We are of course talking about double truck, those kind of containers and stack and so on. That is one way to move forward. If you look at every aspect, whether it is in track lane or it is right, we have more than 350,000 vendors. We have so many of assets. So how do you do good engineering asset management of these assets? And that is another, because these assets are worth billions of dollars. How do we effectively utilize that is another technological possibility. We talked about creating new Gati Shakti cargo terminals. But there also, how do we leverage principles of IoT, track and trace technologies, artificial intelligence to predict what we need, where we need. If Amazon is today able to do one-day delivery, it is not merely because they have some supersonic jet with them. It is also because they are able to predict how many items, what quantity, where, which warehouse to keep so as to optimize. So optimize route planning, predictive asset maintenance in all our factories, whether it is for wheels, whether in ICA, whether in railway factory and so on. How do we do smart factory automation? So unless we are able to bring technology, whether for track, even for coverage, if you look at today, right, we are talking that okay, coverage deployment will take lot of time. What are the technology elements there? Laying optical fiber may be faster, right? Then maybe track to the locomotive or RFID correction, maybe every 1 kilometer we can do. Then today we are looking at loco to the station using GSM. Can we talk about LTE? In future, can we talk about 5G? Because we are going to the 5G world. At some point of time, maybe 5 or 10 years down the line, the newer networks, because how long we can carry in 5, as you know in telecom communication, what happens? Every new generation of technology comes every decade, and a phone or a network is expected to still integrate and carry forward all the legacy technologies. So I am talking about these are the different technological adoptions. How do we do condition monitoring of our tracks in a predictive manner? The point I am trying to come is technology today has become very, very important. If today lot of mergers and acquisitions you are seeing in the corporate world, in railway industry itself, it is because we are living in a world where winner takes it all. There is no place for too many fragmented industry. That is where we are not made budget crisis. This is very important because tomorrow we shall export Bharat to other countries. Same is the case today we are looking at the high speed trains again for the future of passenger travel. Maybe today we have a collaboration, but we have to develop indigenously, we have to protect our intellectual property because this high speed train is not only for Delhi Mumbai corridors. Already we are talking of 2 more in future in 2047. Who knows? Most of our cities will be connected to high speed corridors. And therefore, investing today to leverage its fruits tomorrow in 2047, we have to focus as on technology adoption as well as on intellectual property generation, preservation, and having that ownership with us. This has become absolutely critical in today's context. Further, if I try to take this discussion further, India don't depend on other countries dictating us, right? And therefore, hydrogen-based trains, 100% electricity, and how we are moving forward is a goal that we have to have. It is we who firmly believe in one earth, one family, one future. And therefore, it is a mandate for us, it is our responsibility, not because others are telling, not because we have somebody to please. As India acquires its preeminent position amongst the community of nations as the leading country, this is something that we have to do. Further, everything that we talked about so far, we talked about technology, we talked about track modernization, we talked about improvements in signaling systems, safety systems, locomotives, modern stations. We talked about everything. One very important thing that we so far did not discuss is who will do it. Without people, there is nothing. So how will you do this new development of the people for the people, and by which qualified and skilled people from where? The entire railway industry today, with 12 lakh employees and many more to add, the entire logistics sector today, 2.2 crore people and maybe 1 crore more to add in the next 5 years, actually is looking for qualified people who will embrace new technology and deploy it in the field. That is where I want to take just 2 or 3 minutes of your time to briefly highlight. Of course, Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya is under the Ministry of Railways. Our mandate is for entire transportation logistics sector. We are not only having regular education programs like BTech, MTech, PhD, MBA in railway engineering of a very good demand. Our placement, even in 2 years, our operation has been very good. Last year, except maybe 3-4 people, almost everybody got placed in the engineering side.
Short distance streams of passenger traffic, thereby affecting the movement of long distance rail traffic, primarily freight as well as passengers. So we are in fact inverting the pyramid and causing all the associated problems with this kind of pricing mechanism that we are having. The Railway Minister has also announced in the floor of Parliament that the passenger subsidy on account of this underpriced passenger traffic is to the extent of 57,000 crore rupees annually, which again is a very big sum. So on the other hand, freight, which is the bread and butter of the Indian Railways, tends to take a back seat, as 80 to 90% of the management time is spent in tackling issues related to passenger traffic, whereas only not more than 20% of management time goes into tackling or discussing issues related to freight traffic. So since most of you are from the corporate sector, you will understand that the main revenue stream of the Indian Railways therefore doesn't get the kind of attention which it should get from the top management of the Indian Railways. When you look at the expenditure side, out of every 100 rupees spent by the Indian Railways, 60 to 65 rupees goes away in payment of salaries alone. 30 rupees is the energy bill. So you are left with barely 5 to 10 rupees to be spent on whether it's capital expenditure or anything else, which again is an area of very big concern. So I'm highlighting these issues, and maybe our own speakers would also like to enlighten us on this. On the other hand, we are faced with another challenge, that is fall in the average lead of freight traffic. So while we should have been expecting the average lead of freight traffic to increase, but it has actually been falling in the last few years. A similar challenge on the freight side is over-dependence on 4 or 5 commodities for the entire freight basket. About 48% of the freight basket is coal, 10% cement, 5% each for food grains and iron and steel, fertilizers is 4%, POL 3%, that makes 85% of the freight basket. So if just 5 or 6 commodities are making up your entire freight basket, it's again a very big area of concern, particularly because when 48% of it is coal, and as we are all aware, we have the stated declared objective of the government of India to decrease the dependence on fossil fuels for generation of energy. Hence, the thermal power plants which had been located in the hinterland are now outliving their total life, and they will soon be closed down. So all fossil fuel thermal plants are now being located either on near ports or near pitheads. Therefore, requirement for transportation of coal will reduce substantially in the next 5 to 10 years. As a result, this 48% share of freight traffic in coal will come down to at least 25% or even less, depending on how fast the hinterland-based thermal power plants close down, or the dependence is reduced to that extent. Now, which commodity is going to fill this gap? Not iron ore, none of the commodities that I mentioned, cement, food grains, iron and steel, fertilizer, it cannot fill this gap. The only one that is containers. And that is again a very big challenge, as the current share of container traffic is barely 5 to 7%. Increasing it substantially is a very big challenge, and unless the Indian Railways start planning for this shift in modal traffic towards containers, it will become very difficult at a later stage. So now when we talk of reduction in logistics costs, these are the kind of issues that we need to tackle, because unless we increase the modal share of freight in rail transport, lead to shifting of container traffic to railways, any talk about reduction in logistics costs becomes meaningless. So, therefore, we on the railways not only have to talk about shifting of modal traffic to railways, we also have to examine how first mile and last mile connectivity issues for this shift in modal traffic can be tackled. One very good thing for the Indian Railways that has been happening is the astronomical increase in the capital expenditure in the last 5 to 10 years. 10 years ago, the annual capital expenditure was in the range of 50 to 70,000 crores annually. Currently, it has gone up to more than 250,000 crores annually. So that has been a giant increase, which has basically coincided with the merger of the railway budget in the general budget. So you can say the general budget is now financing a large part of the capital expenditure on the Indian Railways.
ICC Rail India Forum. Thank you for having me here. It is a privilege and honor to be here and talk about what Indian Railways is planning to do, what Indian Railways has done in recent past, and what we are thinking about the overall scenario in the country, especially in medium term by maybe 2030 and then 2047. You would be aware that India's GDP is about to touch almost 30 to 40 trillion US dollars by 2047. That would roughly translate in about 7 to 8 times increase in per capita income. And rising the income would lead to consumption. Consumption in absolute volume. I'm not just talking about value, because value may, inflation may come into picture. So absolute volume is also expected to increase. Again, there is an estimate that the absolute volume is likely to increase up to 5 to 6 times by 2047. So, and currently, if we talk about Indian Railways, we are carrying about 1.6 billion tons every year. So, that would roughly translate to about 7 to 8 billion tons. So, even if rest everything is constant, there is a huge scope of growth as far as volume is concerned. There is a great responsibility to plan for carrying this much of traffic in about 20 to 25 years, and create infrastructure according to the needs. If we talk about just freight traffic. In passenger segment, our population we are the most populous country, with rising income again 7 to 8 times. we need to carry a lot of people. Our population is going to touch about 170 crores, etc. And before it starts declining, somewhere in 2070. So keeping that in view, everybody cannot go to Bangalore by air. And you cannot go by car. You cannot take buses from Delhi to Bangalore. So there is a huge scope of carrying passenger traffic as well, long distance. Because our country is not very small, our country is not very large, but it is sufficiently large so that the relevance of rail for freight as well as for passenger transport. What we are doing. Sir has already mentioned that there is a multiple times increase in the capex and government support in last few years. Just to give you a number, this year the budgetary support is about 2.6 lakhs crore. This is almost about 5 times more than 5 years ago. There is a huge investment in infrastructure creation, development of facilities and asset procurements. We are constructing about more than 5,000 track kilometers every year, and this is almost double the average rate of track construction 2 years ago, maybe 5-6 years in the past. Similarly, we are procuring almost every year. This year the target is 37,500 wagons, freight wagons. Again, this is almost double that with what we have been doing some 5 years ago. Similarly, we have about 85,000 coaches in the entire system. In 20 years, we would like to procure modern design coaches, Vande Bharat and other similar design, up to about 80,000 coaches. We should be equipped with distributed tractions, which can keep you faster. It can run faster. It has better interiors and facilities. It is safer. I mean, in the railway amendment discussion, almost every honorable MP has asked for running of new Vande Bharat trains. In New Bharat, in New Viksit Bharat, the aspirations are rising, and Indian Railways is planning and gearing up to meet those expectations. In enhancing passenger, there are two main key elements. One is station redevelopment, and second one is introduction of Vande Bharat trains. Vande Bharat trains, chair car, intercities, you know already, there are about more than 100 services running all across the country. We are about to introduce the sleeper version of the same, and the trials are going on. Then we are also thinking of introduction of short distance regional version. That would be metro kind of facility on the Vande Bharat platform. And similarly, we are also planning to introduce Amrit Bharat trains, which are non-AC, to cater to the other than the upper middle class. We should run at long distances on the old coach model.
So when I looked at the panel topic, it says transforming connectivity and modernizing Indian railways. Now, the question that came into my mind was that how do you transform connectivity? Now, the very obvious answers that will come to anybody's mind would be transform it by having dedicated freight corridors, transform it by having maybe dedicated passenger corridors, transform it by having beautiful swanky stations, transform it by having the most modern rolling stock. These are all the things that come immediately to mind. And you know, in the consulting world, we always used to say that there is a hard intervention and there is a soft intervention. Especially with railways, it's very curious that most people, when they look at transformation, they only think of the hard interventions. That's what comes immediately to mind. Double the tracks, put more and more capex. It's like 2.45 lakh crores, as Mr. Sanjeev Garg mentioned. It was 50,000 crores a decade back, and now it's a large sum of money. The point And there are 5 questions that came to my mind which I would try to kind of give my own thoughts on. The first question is that what about transformation and modernization through change in policies? It's not just about transformation by investing money, but what about change in policies? So, a very recent discussion I was having with one of the retired railway traffic officers is about the freight slabs of railways. Now, it is modernized. The IT infrastructure, the IT, the ability to process data is modernized immensely. So why do we still need slabs? Does the road sector give you slabs? Does it say that 0 to 10 kilometers so much, 10 to 20 kilometers? They say exactly, okay, 15 kilometers, this is the rate. Why can't railways do that? Why does the railways tariff have to be absolutely static? Why can't it vary as per requirement? Sometimes there is an opportunity to make more money, and there is sometimes opportunity to capture traffic by giving a subsidy. But in a government system, how do you enable that? Because a discretion in a government system is extremely difficult to operationalize. In a private sector, of course, the KPIs are different. In a government sector, the KPIs are different. But having said that, is it a complete, something that just cannot be done? Or is there something that can be done? Is a question that comes to my mind.
Which I think is an extremely creditable performance on the part of both IRCTC and Chris. We are fortunate here to have Mrs. Rajni Hasija, the former CMD of IRCTC, who actually led this kind of revolution in the last 3-4 years, just before she superannuated.
Distinguished panelists, guests and colleagues. I think the stage has been set in the first session itself. What should be the vision for the period which we are talking about, 2030 to 2047. Now, there was a question in the first session, I think it was by Dr. Ahirbar, and it was to the Vice Chancellor of the Gati Shakti University. He had 2 questions. Who will do this change or this transformation, and how? So, I think it has a very simple answer. We need to do the change. We are the change makers with the industry, of course, with collaboration with the all stakeholders. And then how? The how part is to be answered by this August gathering here. I would like to focus on the important areas which are required for making this transformation as we are discussing here. And these are basically, we have to focus on operational efficiency, enhancing the operational efficiency, whatever it makes to take it to that level. Then the most important part would be the enhancing the customer experience. And that customer experience means people who are responsible for delivering services as far as railway employees or the officers or decision makers are concerned. And of course, there are internal customers, people who are running the operations, people who are basically providing these services, whether they are from the operation side, whether they are from the maintenance side, whether they are the infra providers, whosoever it is. So they have to be looked into. We have to focus on those people also. Infra development is, of course, being taken care of by the government by making the required funding requirements, which I think has grown 5 times in the last 5 years, which is being well taken care of. But we have to justify that those funds which are being utilized for developing the infra, we have to bring business. We have to, fulfill the goal which we have set in terms of the next 5 years. We have to achieve the target of 3,000 million tons. And then by 2047, the modal share, as ED planning was talking about, has to, we have to increase it to that level, which is actually we are supposed to do. And of course, sustainability of this whole process is a key aspect of all this process. I would like to focus majorly on the customer experience part, because the rest of the things have been discussed in detail. Now, to enhance the customer experience, of course, Chris, as the strategic IT arm, has been taking this responsibility since the late 80s. In fact, it started somewhere in 1986. And we are the pioneers in the digitization and digitalization of the various processes which we have to deliver to the customers. Now, of the routes have been electrified. Similarly, the technology in infrastructure part, that is track modernization, the rolling stock modernization, we are doing whatever is possible. We are importing technology. We are trying to develop, like Bharat trains is an indigenous product. So we are trying our best to do those things. But as far as customer experience is concerned, we need to focus majorly on digital transformation of delivery processes. And we are doing it. In terms of passenger services, ERS is an example. We at present are handling 28,000 bookings per minute, which we intend to increase to almost 2.5 lakhs bookings per minute, for which we have already planned, we are working on it, and maybe in a 6 months or 1 year period, we'll be able to execute this. Similarly, on the freight side, we have achieved the target of around 99% of digital transactions, whereas on the passenger side, especially the reserve segment, we have been able to achieve around 85%. And we target to achieve, make it to 90%. That is the, I think, the ideal achievable target. 10% will remain for the counter booking and these things, but we are planning to, we have already started our activities on that, and we will be able to achieve.
All the panelists. Thank you, Abhishek ji, for inviting. So continuing the communication between Ahirwar ji and Manoj sir, I would like to proudly say I am a byproduct of the founding batch of Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya, moved to the industry from academia and working towards that. Okay. Going ahead, let me present to you a quick video on who we are, what we are doing, summing up in 2.5 minutes, or what we are doing at IIT Madras, and how I'll also talk about the thing which Mr. Sanjeev said, that the cost and how we are keeping it low, how we are presenting it as a business case in India, and what makes us different from the other partners in West, and why do we need it in India right now. Now I'll quickly take some topics from this. This was a compiled video of three particular teams. So at IIT Madras, what we call is the IIT Madras Hyperloop Sphere. So like I was saying, in 21, MOU was signed between IDSO and IIT Madras for setting up a center of excellence for Hyperloop technology in IITM. The student team of IIT Madras, Avishkar Hyperloop, was participating in competitions hosted by Elon Musk in the West since 2017. Going forward, after some point, the investors started asking, what are you doing with the technology? Are you just participating in the competitions, or are you planning to commercialize it? In 2022, the director of IIT Madras and the professors came together, and Tutor Hyperloop Private Limited was incubated at IIT Madras as a deep tech startup. Since the last 2 years, we have been working on the technology, developing a 1.5 ton pod capable of linear induction motor, magnetic leviation, and also in vacuum, where we will be the first one in the world to demonstrate the full stack technology. Now, coming towards the cost and other parts of it, we said we will earn while we learn. So I need not to go and achieve the full stack of Hyperloop technology in vacuum, with tube, and the whole infrastructure in place. The prerequisite of Hyperloop technology is linear induction motor and maglev, which is currently running in the world. There are business cases, it is currently implemented. I can implement the linear induction motor and maglev that I am building in the current railway system, which is what the Indian Railways thought was a very good idea. And thus we were working on some advanced level of projects where we can implement the linear induction motor technology in the current metro, mountain railways, and other segments within Indian Railways. That was first. Second, cost wise, I'll say why we are effective than the West is, what the students have done during their time is, they have reduced the cost of the infrastructure by 50% and patented the technology. So we are more than 50% cost effective than what the West is building as part of the Hyperloop infrastructure. Like there are a lot of industry experts and ministry officials present here. Currently, I think the highest operating train is the NCRTC RITS, which is operational speed is somewhere around 180, and the design speed is 180 and operating speed is somewhere around 150, 160. For me to introduce something which is around 200, 220 kilometers per hour presents a business case, which I can achieve with linear induction motor, not necessarily going towards vacuum. That is one difference between the companies who are working on the Hyperloop in West and us. For them, they are already having 300, 350 kilometers per hour. So for something to make sense there, they have to introduce some close to around 400, 450, then they'll have a business case there. For me, even if I introduce somewhere close to 200, 250, 300 in India, that will present a business case. Talking about the infrastructure, if I create the infrastructure for LIM and vacuum, the same infrastructure will act as a base for future if I have to turn that infra into Hyperloop. I need not to create a new infrastructure for that. That is again advantage for us.
I am SK Suki, retired GM from the business. Question for ED planning. Besides the Vande Bharat sleeper coaches and the other coaches, sitting coaches, we are also developing a Vande Bharat freight version. And this freight version is already maybe 80-90% completed. And the first train is likely to be turned on within the next 3 to 4 months. So, is the railway board thinking of introducing these Vande Bharat freight versions on some other routes?
Normally, we are thinking of a name like Vande Bharat Parcel Express or something like that. But the key question is, Vande Bharat is a very superior design. If you travel from Delhi to Varanasi, you won't get tired. I have personally traveled for a long distance. If I travel in Shatabdi Express, I do get tired after 5 hours, 4 hours. It's a very superior design. And the safety precautions that we take to maintain these kind of assets, the various stocks, is very high. So why should I put in such a high level of safety, high level of technology, high level of effort, and carry something which is non-living? So ultimately, for select parcel cargo which is high value, because there are certain segments which is being carried by air, air cargo. Other than that, it cannot, in my personal opinion, not the official position of the ministry,
it cannot become a mainstay of freight transport. The mainstay of freight transport would most likely remain what Sir has already mentioned, is container. Right? Containerization in the world is very high. In our system in the country, putting together railways as well as the roads, it's much below the national average, global average. So what we foresee is as a more containerization, and that is the future. Definitely for niche product, for high value cargo transportation, something like suppose you have to carry iPhone 16 from Delhi to Bangalore, etc. That's fine. But in my personal opinion, it just cannot become a mainstay of freight transportation when we think of 7 billion tons of transport sometime in the future.
No, we could look at the high rated traffic which is moving by air.
Yes, sir.
In addition to whatever we are moving,
That is right. The
we are
work is going
90% we are moving bulk commodities. Okay,
Yes, sir. The
then
work-
we go in for containerization, but a higher end segment. Why not look at the freight which is moving by air? So the cost of Vande freight coach may be high, but if you compare with the cost of an aircraft, there's a lot of difference. So if a lot of traffic is moving by air, the same traffic, the Indian railways could consider moving by Vande freight.
Yes, sir. As a one product, a basket of product, one product, and it is at the developmental stage. We are thinking of like Vande Bharat parcel special, etc. kind of thing. Once it comes, then it will definitely happen.
Start the second session and then we will break for lunch. Okay, so that's what the discussion is. Okay, so thank you for this session.
That's a great question, Nitin, and I think even before R&D, infrastructure and stuff like that, I think the basic intelligence, the basic education in the field of logistics is drastically lagging. I think the Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya is a great first step, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done, to attract talent, attract the smart people, and to take the industry forward. I have been associated with this for about 25 years, and a whole lot of time we've spent as a company in creating future forward leaders by actually teaching them the softer aspects of logistics. Usually 20 साल 25 साल पहले क्या होता था, logistics was not the word was transporter. अरे ट्रांसपोर्टर है, इसको बाहर भिजा दो, या आपकी कंपनी में जो वीक टैलेंट है उसको ट्रांसपोर्ट डिपार्टमेंट में बिठा दो. इट वाज लाइक शंटिंग, यार ही इज नॉट गुड इनफ, इसको आप ट्रांसपोर्ट में डाल दो. एंड दैट basically now that mindset is changing, and it needs to change, because from a 14% spend of your GDP at 1 trillion was a small figure, at 5 trillion is a larger figure, but for God's sakes at 40 trillion, that's a number that you cannot digest.
I am a party to the National Rail Plan when it was being made in 2019-20, and along with that plan, Railways also made another plan which was it's a policy statement how to implement NRP, that was New India, New Rail. So the technology and sustainability, they are all, you can say, built in those documents. When we talk of improving railways model share to 45%, or increasing train speed, average speed to 50 kmph, or increasing passenger load to say